greatest place to start on this, T, would be to dive into a little bit of current events. I see that we've lost Mike Carpenter.
I think you went to get
here
a
for a
beer
minute.
for happy hour, I'd say.
Oh, a beer for happy hour.
Yeah, I would say.
I was pulling up my list of news here. No sort of crazy secret, but how about okay, here we go. Wes, hey, thanks, Sam. We got questions right away. Should we roll the tape? Do we have to roll the tape? Let's just dive into Q&A.
Yeah, we just dive in.
Let's dive into it. All I've got is some water, unfortunately, with a little bit of BCAAs, branch chain amino acids in them. Trying to keep my.
I'm running out of beer here at the office. I'm gonna have to restock.
Are you drinking Blue Moon?
There's Blue Moon.
I've never seen you drink anything like that in my life.
I don't drink.
This is a great
fridge.
Okay, well, everybody, I thank you guys so much. Sledgehammer, Drag Race Central, Sam Smith, you guys throwing in here some questions already. JT, can you keep track of a few of these? But let's get started with the very first one. Hey, Alan Smith, what's going on, buddy? Where's it at? Okay, let's talk Phoenix Test and Saturday Fan Day. As far as I know, at least one day of the NHRA Phoenix Test at Wild Horse Raceway Park in Phoenix, Arizona will be open to the public. I'm sure it's a ticket, it's a ticketed event. I'm sure you've got to buy a ticket, but I always look forward to those preseason tests. Not always, but you get to normally see some fresh faces. You get to see some new look cars, right? You get to see the new wrap, the new paint job, guys, new helmets, and maybe there's some new teams or whatnot. I always look forward to these preseason tests. I think it's going to be interesting because I believe it's going to be very well attended. That's probably the thing that's going to be the most exciting about the Phoenix test session and just all these early preseason tests. There's just a lot of racing going on. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot of new cars. I mean, even Pro Stock, man, there's some news that's going to break in the coming weeks that I think is really crazy, right? I mean, there's some new cars coming to Pro Stock. There's new Pro Mod teams. We got new alliances being formed in Funny Car and Top Fuel. There's a lot of positive movement, in my opinion, out there in the Nitro or the NHRA world. I'm curious what your guys' take is going to be on this. Sam Smith asked, what's been the most overlooked story this offseason? Mike, do you have any input there?
No, I don't. I just had to go get my after hours material.
Oh, you had to go get a beer?
I called it. Yeah.
Yeah, you did call it. I don't, the most overlooked story of 2021 or of the off season, I don't know. I will tell you, and I'll air it out right here, that I definitely feel bad that we spaced that Richard Hartman 4-second fuel altered run. And I actually feel a little bit bad that we spaced Chris Graves, the 68 car Funny Car race, probably as one of the races of the year. I definitely think it's in that conversation, right? I mean, but that's just what's so hard about our sport. There's so much stuff
in every
happening.
Category. We went over it and over it and over it, and there were so many that could have went in. I mean,
but then you get ticky tacky, right?
Yeah,
and you have to get ticky tacky
and go with it.
Yeah, I mean, you get a little ticky tacky.
I mean, if you remember, we started with like we talked about much more detailed categories, and we really, once we got broad, we really had to narrow it down, and we only had 4 or 5 nominations for each category. You're talking about early or highlights of the year that we may be missing. Our buddy Nate dropped a little knowledge on us earlier today. I'm trying to pull that back up. Some things that.
Oh, are you talking about all this stuff going on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's that at? Where is that?
We've talked about Tony Stewart Racing. We've talked about Ron Capps. We've talked about AB, Justin Ashley, Camry Caruso, Jim Yates, Titan Racing Engines, Pro Stock. They've been testing the wheels off that car.
Yes.
I think they're at test session number 3 right now. So that'll be interesting. I mean, Pro Stock is just kind of chock full of interesting.
It's got some juice right now.
How about the new Bo Butner car? We saw that testing.
Good looking hot rod.
That thing looks good, right? I like the color combination on that.
I really do. Matt Smith moving to a Suzuki. Austin Prock, there's rumors that he's going to be coming back Pertaps full time. The Alan Johnson to Coletta storylines. I think that's probably been one of the most overlooked storylines. But Sam Smith, I'm actually going to ask Sam. Sam's question was, what's the most overlooked story this offseason? I'm curious what Sam thinks. It is. Oh, here he gave us an answer. I think it's Ron Capps as an owner. Everyone is looking at AB and Stewart. I agree. I got to tell you, for me, and this, like, we're going to be honest and talk shop here, right? I think that there's going to be a real test. I mean, if you think about it, this is a big bite. We were talking about a big bite, you know what I mean, earlier with Chris Graves, 14, 15 races. But having spent an entire career as a hired gun driver to then dive into team ownership, payroll, human, HR, all those different things. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts.
JT, are you available for like freelance HR that you could help Ron Capps?
Yeah, I can. I mean, like, I do. I do a pretty good job here.
Director.
Yeah,
I truly think Ron Capps is a special guy, and I think he's got tremendous support from some people. But I think he'll even tell you, and I think I sensed it, when we were interviewing him prior to the NHRA finals in Pomona. He joined us from the comforts of his motor coach at the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds. That guy's this is a big new world for him.
I think he's excited by it, though. I mean, like you said, his whole career as a hired gun driver, I think he's looking for something new. He's learned a lot, obviously, over these decades of experience being around these big teams, successful owners, Don Schumacher, Don Prudhomme, the list goes on.
But if you think about Antron Brown, that deal, that's been in the works for what, 2-3 years?
Right. It was like a very announced, very strategic rollout, whatever you want to say. So yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it. I stand by the fact that having these guys with that pressure on them to think about everything outside of the cockpit that they maybe haven't had to be concerned with in the past is going to be good for the sport.
What's the latest on continuing the nitro combination and like kind of storylines that have flown under the radar? What's the latest on Alan Johnson, Top Fuel Alan Johnson, and where his allegiances will lie in 2022? I mean, is it all confirmed and everything that he's moving to Coletta, or what else going on?
But I have not seen anything official. Have you?
No, I don't think I have. And, admittedly, I don't have the tentacles in the nitro world that I do in some of the other parts of our sport. We've kind of always leaned on editor-in-chief Nate Van Wagenen and senior editor Josh Hatchett for that nitro kind of hookup and that nitro connection. But I just find that to be interesting because as those stories started to circulate and the rumors were swirling about that he was moving camps and he was going to be less involved with Scrappers Racing, the car driven by Mike Salinas, obviously. I just find it interesting that nobody really wanted to bite on that, but it speaks to something that we've talked about a lot here on this show, is that those storylines, people run from them, right? Because nobody wants to be the one that aired it out. No one wants to be the one that put something in the atmosphere or surprise somebody with some information. I mean, a lot of the people in our sport, a lot of the personalities, a lot of the on-air personalities, the people that are in front of cameras and microphones quite frequently, they're pretty afraid to talk about that type of stuff, right? Because they don't want to get met with an ass whipping when they walk in someone's pit or a talking to or whatever. And it surprised me because that's the equivalent of Bill Belichick shopping around his services in the NFL. I mean, if rumor was circulating that he was going to go to the Chiefs or he was going to go to some other contender, it would be the talk of town. I mean, it would be unavoidable. But we have the most, I would argue, amongst, if not the most accomplished crew chief in the freaking world, in the game, in drag racing. And nobody knows exactly where he's going to hang his hat in 2022, other than maybe him and a handful of other people. That's a huge story.
Right. There's got to be more to it. There's more to it.
Remember Brady was leaving. Nobody knew where he's going.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of equivalent. I get what you're saying. And I'm surprised that more people aren't talking about it.
There has to be some reason why it hasn't been formally announced yet.
I think it's because he has multiple alliances, right? I mean, I believe that, he had at one point in time, he had like a little bit of involvement in John Force's team, Brittany's car, right? And then, I mean, he's had his hands in a lot of different stuff, and he's also developing other talent, like Brian Hewson, that kind of operated under Alan Johnson for a long time. I think he's identified himself as like a standalone super crew chief, right? Who has been calling the shots primarily on the Scrappers Racing car, Mike Salinas' Top Fuel dragster. But I'm really surprised that there's not more hubbub around that. If I had to point to one thing that was going on in 2021 that I don't think got got the attention it deserved, that's got to be it. The most sought after tuner in our sport, I would say in the history of our sport, not knowing exactly what his intentions are for 2022, 45 days or whatever from the start of the season, find that very interesting.
He's a needle mover too. I mean, you're talking about like the number one individual person that can move the needle for your operation more than anyone. So we'll see. That's exciting. Kind of maybe the last thing that we've got hanging out there that we haven't.
I think it's the last
yet.
thing. And if it will be seismic, in my personal opinion, if he's able to go like to Coletta Motorsports, what happens to his involvement with any other teams will be very interesting, right?
What if he gets JR Todd to that over that?
That's what I'm saying.
And gets him to a championship, or and gets Langdon to a champion, and gets these guys in position, because it's all there at Coletta. Maybe this has been the missing piece. So
that's my thought. Because what if this guy shows up and delivers Connie Coletta or Doug Coletta that world championship that has eluded them for eons? Right? I mean, you nailed it. He's a needle mover. He's a difference maker in the pits. He's the kind of guy that comes along and takes your program from 0 to 335. I mean, you go from also ran status to championship contender just by having that man and his, dry fit dad hat and polo and slacks walking into your pits, man. It is a good look.
That's kind of the look we're all shooting for when we go to the track.
I don't know that you can look cooler at the drag strip than Alan Johnson does. No, Don Prudhomme definitely outperforms him in the cool. Who's the coolest guy at the drag strip? Who's the coolest person you've ever met at the drag strip? Who's the coolest dude in drag racing?
Don Prudhomme's the coolest guy in drag racing. I think that's like a fact. I think it's like in the damn.
It's in the Bible.
Wikipedia or something.
Yeah. It's. I think it's in the Bible. Alan Johnson's in that conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he's just got swagger for days. That dude shows up, and I know there's an aura around him that is really, really impressive. I mean, and I've seen it for a long time. Like, he was on the cover of the magazine, man, back when we were all newsprint. I mean, it was like probably the first.
Yeah.
Inside of the first year,
like holding a block or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Inside of the first year. Yeah, it's right in the other room, T.
Yep.
Great cover too. We shot that actually at the PRI show. And that was a really fun story to write. But I remember having that conversation with some of the funniest, craziest shit that anybody's ever told me. Alan Johnson told me. And I just like hearing him talk about how he leaves the track Sunday night. Like, how interesting is that? And I go, really? Like, you win all the time. Like, don't you like want to hang out with the team? And he's like, no, I love them and I want to spend time with them, obviously, but I'm not there to party. I'm there to win the race. And as soon as that job's done, I'm going home so I can take my daughter to school on Monday morning. Because that's something that's
the coolest guy there.
Yeah. But I mean, I just think that's a really, he's got this laser-like focus, and he's all for having a good time or whatever, and he'll have a drink or whatever. He'll have a Pacifico. That's what he used to drink. I don't know if he still drinks it now.
We ran into him at the bar in Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, he's a good time haver.
It was like,
man, this is serious
business.
What is
that place called? It's like a speakeasy. Maybe
it's called
the name of it.
Ghost Donkey.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't been,
hiding way in the back.
Have I not taken you there, T? I take people there. That's like one of the places that I take.
Have I? No.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he left as soon as we came in. He was like, these guys.
Yeah, we rolled up at the bar and took the place over, and AJ bounced. But Ghost Donkey, for those that don't know, is a speakeasy inside the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Las Vegas, and you literally, if you want it, it's an exit. There's a pinkish door with a donkey painted on it. But it has an exit sign above it. Like, you'd think it's a fire exit, literally. But if you walk through it, it's a badass bar. It's a little bitty bar. I bet you couldn't fit 30 people in the place. But anyways, it's one of my favorite places to visit when I go to Las Vegas. I always go by there for at least a couple drinks, and maybe they have some truffle nachos that'll blow your mind, man.
Yeah.
That's some of the best. Yeah, they're the bomb, man.
Sticking with Nitro, the one thing I want to talk about was the Toyota Supra funny car. I think this thing is badass looking.
It is
the
badass
proportions
looking.
of it, the way this thing looks like a hot rod, and the graphics they put on it. And shout out to everyone that kept that under wraps and that did that deal, and they kind of just sprung it on us. And I think that's exciting. I know these cars don't look like cars anymore, but they really, I think that kind of peaked maybe a few years ago. They're working their way toward having these cars have individual personality to where it fits the proportions of the street model that it's supposed to represent, and they're not all just the same body with different decals.
Bro, that thing looks like I agree. That thing looks like a Toyota Supra. You know what I mean? Like, it It really does. I
It
think
really,
they
it
did a
really
great
does.
job
I
of
think they
keeping
did
some
a
of those body
fantastic job.
lines. I'm going to pull up. I mean, I know that people have seen it, but if JT, if you want to throw a photo up of this thing, I mean, obviously it's not like, it's not a freaking identical twin or anything like that.
No,
but
but the spirit of the car is there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Here you go with the photo T. I mean, the headlights, you know, the grill, the way the hard body line, the way they did the roof line, the way they did the windshield, the side glass,
If
you
you
know,
see the
side
side view
windows.
too, it's got a real I don't know what you call it, the greenhouse. I don't know what you want to call the roof area. The way it's done, it really looks good.
We're probably going to see that exact car on No Prep Kings next season.
Yeah, it's too funny, man. But no, I genuinely think it's a really, really good looking car, and I'm glad to see. I think it's interesting that Toyota has such a presence in drag racing. You know, I go back to that a lot. I find that very interesting. Their support of so many teams, their support obviously at Capco, their support of Antron Brown, AB. It's just cool to see a brand like that just embrace drag racing the way that they have. I wish there was more of that. What we see from Dodge, what we see from obviously now Direct Connection. Yep. That was big news this week. Tony Stewart Racing announcing his partnership with Direct Connection. It would appear to me that Dodge is making a big, strong push to revitalize like one of their old legacy brands, right? I haven't heard those words, Direct Connection, in a long time, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
so it's pretty cool. Like you said, it's kind of outside the box for Toyota. You know, they're not a hardcore American muscle car brand that we associate with drag racing.
Yeah, I agree, man, and I'm glad to see it. And they do. There's a comment here, Drag Racing Central, saying Toyota actually pushes its drivers to the front. They really do. They're big on pushing the drivers and putting guys out front. Like if you go by their display at any national event or any event that they go, they're throwing human beings at it. It's not just a bunch of cars on display. They've got all their drivers there. They're doing autograph signings. I think those are the things that our sport needs more of. Marketing partners and sponsors that want to build heroes, that want to create characters, that want to, you know, that understand that dynamic exists, that we have to turn these people into stars. We have to celebrate them. We have to treat them like celebrities. We have to treat them like pro athletes. I mean, because that's like a conscious decision. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we got to have a handler walking around. We got to put on the show.
That's where they messed up for so many years. Not doing that.
100% agree. If we scroll back up here a little bit, T, let's catch a couple of other of these questions. I saw somebody ask something about
a Toyota driver.
I know, man.
For a long time.
Greg Decker. This is a great comment. Greg Decker, one of the most underserved storylines in drag racing, DSR's basic dissolvement. I got to say that this is something that's actually been weighing on me because it's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that Don Schumacher Racing went from this super team, right? A conglomerate, if you will, to a single car team in 2022. I mean, a car that wasn't even involved is now involved, right? Tony Schumacher making his, grand return to the sport of drag racing, which is fantastic news. But, you know, as exciting as the Tony Stewart news has been, and as great as that is, obviously the Leah connection makes sense. And I understand the dynamics and how things work and Hagen getting involved, but that news would have been even better, in my opinion, if Don Schumacher Racing was able to maintain their stable, right? And Tony Stewart comes into drag racing,
right?
Where there is a little bit of pain here. I think we have to acknowledge that we're seeing one of the most stable, sizable operations in the history of drag racing shrink dramatically. And it's great that we have these other teams coming in, right? Thank God for Antron Brown putting his program together. Thank God for Ron Capps putting his program together. Obviously, the Tony Stewart thing, again, is a great thing for the sport of drag racing. But man, I do hate to see DSR dwindle. I mean, are you surprised that hasn't been talked about more, Mike? Because it seems like a big freaking deal. I mean, this is a guy who's been on the starting line of these races with the camp shirt on and 77 logos on either side of it. I mean, do you
think some
is
people
this the end?
You think some people saw it coming? Like he's going to retire at some point?
Yeah, I mean, he's getting older. He's had health issues. I think he's obviously on the rebound still out there every weekend on the track. I don't know that that's the immediate pressing issue. I think having Tony back, I think maybe that was something that he wanted and something that helped push this, that he would get to go racing with his son again. Maybe there's more to that part of it than we're giving credit. But I do agree that it would have been awesome to have all these other teams in addition to the huge DSR juggernaut, because really all those drivers you just mentioned came at the expense of DSR. Those are all former DSR racers. So it would be super healthy for the sport to see all that, but there's just not enough to go around.
Yeah.
And so it kind of has to come from somewhere.
You almost have to wonder like that. It's funny because I feel like there have been things that we missed, you know what I mean? Like we missed, I wasn't alive for those 64 funny car shows that Andy Carter was talking about Billy Meyer being at, right? That was like before my time, right? I mean, I know it exists and we're students.
We just see the highlights and hear people talk about it.
I mean, and we weren't there for like the early days and some of those really, the height of Bob Glidden and Lee Shepard and, you know what I mean? Like the height of the Warren Johnson. I mean, I saw that stuff unfolding as a kid, right? But we weren't like in it like we're in it now. And it's funny because, if I'm starting to pile up some of my stories to tell my grandkids and to tell later, I mean, we're going to get to say that we probably saw the beginning, middle, and end of the drag racing super team era, right? Like when John Force's got 65 cars and JFR, and Don Schumacher's got all these different. I mean, I remember Don Schumacher racing, having funny cars, top fuel cars, pro stock bikes, right? I mean, I remember that vividly. I mean, they took up an entire lane at a drag strip, right? A huge section of the pits was all DSR, camp DSR. And to think about it now, I'm curious. Let's kind of bookend this particular conversation. Are those days officially gone, guys? I mean, are those the super team, multi-team conglomerates, cars in different categories? Has that ship sailed by and large?
I think so.
I don't think so. I actually think it's it's a cycle. Everything goes in a cycle, and it's kind of a market correction, course correction. I think it's what we need. I think it's healthy right now, but I think
great timing.
Eventually it'll come back around and we'll start to see consolidation. We see this a lot. We see this in our industry. We see this on the track and off.
I think it's a great point. I mean, I can see it from either way. I can look at this and go, you know what, man, I don't know who's going to come along. I mean, is it going to be are we going to get another Tony Stewart? I mean, is it going to be a Middle Eastern sheik? We've seen that happen, right? Is it going to be some billionaire heiress or heir that comes along that's got a need for speed or has fancies himself or herself a drag racer? It's funny because for the longest time, that has kind of been the NHRA's like growth plan. It's like, let's hope another rich guy shows up or gal and can foot the bill on some of this stuff. Because that's what I think people largely sleep on, is that what Don Schumacher perhaps did that was most significant wasn't winning every funny car race last year, wasn't all those championships with Tony Schumacher, wasn't the run. I think it was that he had a profitable drag racing team. That's like, holy shit. That's what is he was making money drag racing. Right. I mean, that deal was a profitable endeavor for him for a long time. So I think that's really the missing piece. That's what NHRA, I think, has to be working towards, is how they can create an environment where a Tony Stewart or where someone else, another well-to-do team owner or somebody that's really business savvy or and race savvy that has deep pockets or has resources, right? Maybe has just the ability to borrow money, whatever, but could build a race team and turn it into a profitable endeavor. And that's what I'm hoping is the situation for Antron Brown. You know what I mean? That's what I'm hoping is the situation for Ron Capps.
As a single car team,
it's possible.
It's much, they can get to that point much quicker and sustain it.
Yeah. It's just, don't you find that to be that's the missing link, is that we would have more people come into this deal if they felt like there was a pathway to some level of like fiscal responsibility. Like, can we get enough sponsorship, generate enough merch sales, generate enough, visibility online that we can make this thing at least pay for itself?
The more teams you add, though, the more mouths there are to feed. So, I mean,
for
it's
sure,
double-edged sword there. So,
I don't know. I mean, it's still, to me, everyone that started a new team, Tony, Antron, Ron, they all have their reasons outside of it being the most absolute home run investment in the world,
right?
To do this. They love the sport. They've been in it. This is where they exist. Tony, is enamored by it, I guess, it kind of being new to him. So there's other reasons. And I think just from a absolute, like, is this the home run investment that you want to make to make money as a business? That's probably still not the case. And until we get to that point, I don't think we're going to see just true total outsiders take a
like
look at
opportunists.
Right.
Yeah.
Opportunists.
And that's, I would love to see drag racing arrive at a point someday. And I don't know that it'll ever happen in Top Fuel and Funny Car. I'm not sure. But where it is, there are opportunists going, hey, you know, we could have a rental car, a sponsored car. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's how you attract the mainstream, in my opinion. That's how you get to that mainstream recognition.
Until NHRA like starts paying some money where they're putting these guys on a pedestal, then sponsors looking in, it's hard for them to go, well, you know, our guys in drag racing are out there racing for, you know, peanuts. You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
it's just around. I mean, I don't know. I find it interesting because you think about some of the people that are on the sidelines. I mean, Tony Schumacher has been on the sidelines for a couple of seasons, right? Alex Laughlin is doing partial. I mean, he's nominated for Social Influencer of the Year, right? He's got one of the strongest followings in drag racing, and he's piecemealing sponsorships together and hitting certain races, not able to go do the full pull. And I'm like, man, if he can't get it done,
right?
You know, and so you have to be like, what are the missing pieces? And I point to that conversation. I don't know if it's happening or not. Maybe it is. I don't think it is. But there's probably at some point going to have to be some conversations between those guys. We talked about it before, a needs assessment. Like NHRA coming to the Alex Laughlins of the world and being like, hey, what do you need from us? What more do you need? Is it tickets? Is it what is it that you need to be able to secure the financing and the partnerships that are going to be required to have Alex Laughlin competing for a championship?
They need to invest in those kids.
Yeah, I agree.
And men, women. I mean, they need to invest in them. I mean, it's obvious they don't. You know, you've talked about it for years. Everybody the NHRA putting their apples in the John Force basket. You know, but you've got all these characters down here, and just nourish it a little bit. You know, watch them grow.
This is a controversial statement, but I honestly think that there will be a significant silver lining to John Force's exit. Like, just he gobbles up so much of the available limelight. He gobbles up so much of the available TV time because, to his credit, even if he DNQs, it's big news.
Right.
Like, if he, you know, no matter what he does, it's big news, or he makes it big news. Right. Mm-hmm. Again, kudos to John Force, but I do think that there may be room. There's room for someone else right now. Sure. But when he does make the decision to exit, whenever that is, I honestly am pretty certain that it's not going to be anytime soon, to be honest. I think as long as he can physically do it, we're going to see John Force doing it. But I also don't know that that's always great news. I don't know that that's a great thing. I really don't. It's a legitimate conversation that I think a guy has to have when your biggest star is in his 70s, right? I don't know. It really does. It makes me think. A lot. And whenever he chooses to retire, it just gives a lot more space to whomever is next.
And
right?
Younger generations they're not relating to John Force, you know, and they don't remember the old John Force. You know,
they don't know the shtick. They don't know the history.
They don't get it at all. So, I mean, you know, to go there with everything, I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't make much sense at all to me.
You know, and two, I mean, there's a great comment here. JFR is only sucking all of the air out of the room because no one else is breathing, right?
That's true, too.
That's
great. That's great right there.
I mean, it's correct. I mean, no one else is. I don't really see anybody fighting him for that stardom. I mean, if, you know, everybody loves my UFC references or whatever, but, you know, there's 2 or 3 clear stars in the UFC, right, that they're behind. But there's all these people that are like trying hard to be part of that conversation, making challenges, right? Like the biggest stars in UFC are getting called out all the time. The biggest stars in boxing are getting called out all the time. You know, like, hey, I want to fight that guy. I think I'm better than that guy. And I don't really feel like I see much of that going back to the great nature of drag racers. You know what I mean? Like, everybody wants to get along. Everybody wants to be buddies. Everybody wants to hang out in the pits. Nobody wants any sort of awkwardness. But man, we need to see some people fighting for that top spot in our sport, in my opinion. We really do. You know, it's a really interesting fact.
Maybe it's like you said, a needs assessment, some flexibility. I think maybe it's like, this is the program that NHRA puts in front of you. Here's the deal. Or you know that you fit in with this or you don't. And when we're not going to be flexible to what you may need as a smaller team or a team that's going to run a partial schedule or whatever. Like you said, maybe an individual needs assessment of what works for each team and kind of meet them on that level rather than we're up here. The bar's been set here by these teams for so long, and you've got to get to here before, you know, you're on this level or able to make it work for you. That's an interesting thought.
It really is, man.
A little more adaptability and flexibility.
Here's a great question from Kevin Stevenson. Right now, who do you think is the most visible drag racer, period, from any racing series?
Well,
most visible drag racer.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking across the board with not just hardcore drag racing fans, but just, I mean, like TV, if you take everything in, I mean, we've said it for a long time, you know, like when the Street Outlaws came out, you know, we're walking people, Wes, even our good friends, Mike, your good friends, they don't really know what we do, but they know the Street Outlaws show or whatever. Right. You know, Justin Swanstrom, people know him in grudge racing, radio racing, now from the show and No Prep Kings. Big Chief, he's been on every episode, you know, stand out on that. Ryan Martin, of course, wins everything, you know, pretty much. So I don't know. Like if you want to, I'd say there's a lot of generations out there that don't know who John Force is that do know who those guys are.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, man, I gotta be honest with you.
Anybody from the Street Outlaws deal is what I would say.
Yep.
I mean, I point to someone like probably Ryan Martin. I mean, is Ryan Martin the most visible guy in drag racing and all?
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think that's part of the reason why he's on our Racer of the Year
Big Chief.
list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, man, it's tough because if I look at, you know, I don't think I get frustrated because I don't think people like Steve Torrance, Greg Anderson, Matt Smith, they're not near the household name that I believe they should be. You know what I mean? Like they don't.
It's sad.
And it is sad. I mean, I think about Steve Torrance, man. This dude, it's unbelievable what he's accomplished in drag racing. I mean, he's a bad son of a gun, bad hombre right there.
Yep.
And there will be a moment when he's in the conversation with some of the best to ever do it, right? I mean, he is won at a level. It's incredible, the winning that guy's done. But if you compare his, like, I mean, if we did a real honest comparison between like his social following and that of, I mean, I was Googling around looking for a video somebody tagged me in, and I stumbled across like Big Chief right now has got like 1.1 million followers on Facebook, and he hasn't posted on it since last July.
Right.
He hasn't posted on the page, I think, or September. I mean, it's been like months since he's even posted on his page, and he's got 1.1 million followers, right? And I'm going, I mean, let's be honest. He's not accomplished near what a Steve Torrance has or near what a Greg Anderson has, right? Or whomever else. But I mean, there's no comparison between the two visibility. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. But also, I don't think Steve Torrance cares, right? I mean, I don't know that I don't know that that's even on his radar because he doesn't need to, because they already have a standalone business, right? Like, it's tough to compare these two worlds because Ryan Martin, whatever, I'm not trying to dive into everybody's finances, but like the Big Chiefs of the world, the Sean Ellington, Murder Novas of the world, the Dave Comstocks of the world, you know, they need that visibility. They're trying to stoke that fire. They're working it day in and day out. Lizzie Musey, they're working that because they know the bigger they can get that following, the bigger the audience they can create, the more they can leverage it, the more money they can make because of it. Whereas Steve Torrance isn't really looking at the sport of drag racing through that lens, or his social media following through that lens, right? This is something that he chooses to do because they can afford to do it. Does that make sense? Just such different. I mean, we've gone back to this 100 times. How many times have we called up a racer to try to get them to do an interview or whatever? And I don't need to do an interview. Like, I don't really care if anybody knows what I'm doing because I love doing it.
Yeah. It's
and I'm going to do it no matter what.
They're less of a public personality or character and more of just, I'm out here to race. It's almost like
but then that same guy will bitch about it though, that nobody knows him. And why aren't we the main show?
Thank you, because I was just getting ready to say it.
There is some of that for sure.
Yeah, it's freaking ridiculous, man.
I really think that, and this is like, I'm going to say something inflammatory. There is an ongoing identity crisis here that exists in drag racing, where we want to bitch about not getting paid the money we deserve. We want to bitch about paying too high of entry fees. We want to, we hate, we get so mad about all those things, not being, not having near the sponsorship that exists for Formula One or IndyCar or NASCAR or whatever, right? But we don't want to walk the walk, right? And like, walking the walk is big press conferences, going live on social media, developing your fan base, having an email list, running contests, entertaining fans at the track. Like, and it's tough because it's tough to have your cake and eat it too, right? I mean, if you want to have all the spoils and all the good stuff that comes from a big following and a crazy fanfare and all these things, man, you got to do the things that produce that. Does that make sense? Like, you can't have it both ways. And I ran into this a lot early in my career at Drag Illustrated, with this business. One of the ways that I used to pay the bills, right, was, Mike, you've done this, the PR guy. Like, I was writing press releases for race teams or whatever. And anybody that would give me $500, pretty much, I'd write a story for, I'd cover them or whatever. And I remember what'd you say?
or whatever.
Yeah. $500 is pretty much
pretty
the number.
Open-ended there.
Yeah. But I look back on that, and the biggest battle that I had with so many people is that they wanted to be a superstar, famous drag racer Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but they had no time for that shit Monday through Thursday. Right. Mm-hmm. They wanted to go to the track and have a line of people, there to take pictures with them and sign autographs. And they wanted to be a needle mover, so to speak. They wanted to be a celebrity, but they really only could commit Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they weren't going to do it through the week because they had this other business. And I told them, like, man, I remember running into these problems where, like, hey, the way we get a bunch of people in Houston, Texas to show up and know who you are and buy merch and wait in line to get an autograph or want to pose for a photo is like by showing up at the NHRA Fan Fest on Thursday night, by doing local radio interviews, right? Showing up at the events or going to a 6 a.m. taping of a morning TV show in Baytown, Texas, or whatever, 37 miles from your bougie hotel in downtown Houston, right? And it's difficult to have one without the other, right? It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, you got to do all that shit.
Yeah, you have to be willing to do both.
Yep.
And there's guys that are known for being willing to do it, and ones that aren't. And I think that you've got to be consistent, and you've got to be willing to kind of take the lead on that stuff. So many times, like you guys were talking about, these same guys that say they don't have time for it, then also get upset when they see someone else getting those accolades or whatever, and then you're playing catch up. Okay, well then if they got that from doing press releases and appearances, well, now I want to do that. But they've already got the lead on you because they're already more established for being willing to do that stuff, whatever you want to call it. So it's like, you kind of got to proactively do those things, not reactively. And I think that is that if I had to give advice to someone, go into it with that mentality, not, oh, I didn't really want to do it, but now that I see that my competition is, now maybe I'll dip my toe in that water. So,
or like waiting to do, I've ran into this several times where like, hey, we want to wait till we win a bunch.
Yeah.
To then we'll start posting on social. You know what I mean?
Late.
Or we want to wait until we have a big sponsor to act like we have a big sponsor. And it's like, no. you got to be acting like you have a big sponsor right now. You got to be doing all the things that a big sponsor expects right now. And that's the big disconnect, because I truly believe there's a whole world of people out there that want the sponsorship, want the fanfare, want the merch sales, want all those things, but they don't want to do an interview at 3:00 on a Wednesday afternoon because they're at their business, right? Or they're having a board meeting, or they don't want to do anything to get it. And I get it, but that I point to that. And it's also that thing we talk about all the time, the have to. Lizzie Musey has to, right? Big Chief has to, right? Not only are they like contractually obligated to do some of that stuff, but they recognize that is the vehicle, that is how they're going to achieve what they want to achieve and make money and live a life or have a career in drag racing is they're going to have to do all that stuff. And I don't see that effort, that hustle to do the media, to create the content, to tell the story, to connect with fans, to connect with fellow competitors or whatever. I don't see that effort very much in drag racing's big leagues. I mean, it's interesting because we had a great conversation with Antron Brown and Justin Ashley at the PRI show, right? And I asked them, how big of a job is content creation to you guys now, right now? And they both looked at me and they were like, man, we've realized we've got to do that. We've got to do more of it. And they are doing more of it. And you see it, they're posting regularly and whatnot. But it's like they've been in the deal for a long time and we're just now seeing them like super active on social. It's interesting, right?
Right.
I wonder too how the audience has changed over time. We talk about the glory days of drag racing, John Force, Don Garlitz, and we talk about, someone mentioned the Disney movie about the Ender sisters versus every night or every week on Street Outlaws. How many more eyeballs are on that, and how different the audience is and how it's evolved over time. We talk about this. We just started doing the show a couple of years ago. We've introduced some new things. How many people that are watching the show right now or have, come upon the Drag Illustrated brand have never.
We started the show a long time ago, Mike.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't know. I don't know how many years ago it was, but
I think this is episode 240. Yeah, but I get the drift. You
get my point. There's so many people that haven't seen. We talk about it all the time. If we just published articles we did 10 or 15 years ago,
right,
people will be blown away, and some of our current audience hasn't seen this older stuff.
Yeah.
And same thing goes with the John Force versus Street Outlaws thing. The audience continues to evolve and to change, and just because of the accessibility of social media and digital video and everything, it's so much more accessible to people now. You had to seek it out back in the day. You got to go like buy a VHS or something if you didn't see it on ABC Worldwide World of Sports. And now it's just like you're flooded with whatever you want to search on YouTube or find on TV. So the audience continues to change almost every day. That's the world we live in, and it's like rapidly accelerating. And so I think that's why Street Outlaws is like so much more powerful than we want to give credit to compared to our traditional drag racing heroes.
People want to be entertained all the time. So like, it's not like they just don't unplug. I mean, if they're into something, they can literally.
Oh, you watch Yellowstone and you turn the new episode off and you turn on the podcast that breaks down what happened.
And then you get on a fan page and then
there's so much content.
There's some YouTube guys creating some content for. I'm telling you, like, if you're into something, there's you could just be plugged in the whole time. Or if you're a fan of a certain person, certain people that are active on social media and everything else, you can follow their Facebook pages. You can read down through the thousands of comments when everybody's mouthing each other or whatever, and just
it's like you can't produce enough content.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't. Yeah, even the people that are just flooding the airwaves or whatever you want to call it with content.
I think I saw Swanstrom say something about maybe he had to go to the bathroom the other day or something. And it had like I don't know how many comments. But it's something like that.
Drag Racing Central has a good point here that I want to touch on. I think we forget that sponsors want winners. If you don't win, why would they want to be a part of a team that can't win? And I agree with that. But I think you got the guys that win and decide that they don't need to do any media, that they don't need to engage anyone because they win. You definitely have that group. But I have also seen probably more people that don't win and don't have all that on track success, but they supplement it with the things that we're talking about and are able to consistently maintain or get new sponsors or find a way to have enough funding to get to the track. It's really the secret sauce as far as what you can control. You can't control.
Well, agreed, because that's what I would say is I would almost argue that winning is like the icing on the sundae or like the cherry on top of the sundae. Like if you can win, that's the ultimate. But the fact of the matter is like not that many people win. Well, and here's the other thing. Everybody's winning on their local level, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I watched a really interesting video on YouTube this morning about sponsorship.
Just showing up with a sponsor.
Everybody's a young racer that wins a lot. Like if I had 1,000 people at PRI tell me that their son's 9 years old. He's a 6-time track champion. He won 47 races, whatever. Like that's everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people doing well, right? There's a lot of people setting records. There's a lot of people. How are you going to differentiate yourself? How are you going to stand out? How are you going to, And that I really think is a difference maker. One of the people that I point to that I think did a really great job of it, and he's pulled back. Who puts icing on a sundae? Thanks to him.
But I think you mean like whipped cream on the sundae,
yeah,
or icing,
or like gravy, right, on top of the mashed
Yeah.
potatoes.
I would
type of
put
thing.
gravy on a sundae for sure.
Yeah,
Sausage
I
gravy.
said mashed potatoes, but
Oh.
my point is that
I put on
there
sundae.
are people who have really built a big brand for themselves, and they haven't done a ton of winning. You know what I mean? But they've consistently put themselves. I mean, look at Alex Laughlin. This isn't a guy who's
There's a
won
lot
every
of
drag race. I mean,
examples of
he's done some winning. He won the World Door Slammer Nationals, right? Took home 50 grand down in
You have
Orlando
to
in
do
2000.
just enough.
But
be
it's not like he wins every
relevant,
time
right?
he goes to the drag strip, you know, but he has done a great job of being competitive, being in the conversation, keeping himself relevant, but doing all those intangibles, doing all those extra things. So I don't know that it's all about winning. I don't think it's all
It
about,
definitely is not.
winning. I
definitely
mean, I
is not.
honestly think John Force,
The sponsorships will be easier to get if you're
Yes.
winning everything.
but I don't think,
Yes.
I think John Force would be just as big of a deal right now if he had 3 championships instead of 12 or 16 or whatever. I really do. I think you got to win, but I mean, he has found a way to keep himself relevant. Like I said, I mean, I remember when he DNQ'd at Vegas a couple of years ago. I mean, they did like an 8-minute spot on it. You know what I mean? Like it was a whole thing. Him dejected, walking around the pits, hands in his pockets, pissed off, whatever. And it's like, he's made this a story and he just stunk up the place. I mean, he didn't even qualify. He's not going to race
success.
tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, because of his success. But I mean, I just think that he has done a good job of becoming somebody. I mean, he was headed that way before he ever won, before he was a winning. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's the ultimate thing. If you can walk the walk,
I think you got to win just enough, and you got to make an impact here and there. You can't DNQ for every race, and no one ever sees you. But you've got to be competitive, I would say, and be able to maybe hit a home run every now and then. But then all the stuff you can control, and all the media and all the engagements that you can control, then that's the secret.
No, it's there's a great question from Narcoleptic Customs. What about content creators like us? We don't win, but we build cool stuff and attend all kinds of events. Does it come back to exposure for your sponsor? Well, you know what? I think the answer to that question is that there's a lot of ways to win. That was some of the conversations that we've had here internally at Drag Illustrated. Let's talk about the DI awards again. We see that as a way to win. That to us, the DI awards, that event is a race car that's about to go to the track. It's on Projax right now. We're getting it ready. You know what I mean? We're putting a tune-up in it, but we're going to go out there, and that's our car that's going to hit the track. And the way we win is by generating impressions, generating eyeballs, garnering attention. I think, and I'm not trying to steal words from like Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V.
But you're about to.
But I think winning right now is how much attention can you get?
That's true.
I mean, the currency, it's one of the ways to win right now is in a currency that I think genuinely exists in our world today is how much attention can you garner? And if you can garner a lot, whatever you do, right, is going to provide some value.
Well, just look at advertisers that we have, print moves the needle as well, but there's not that instant gratification of, hey, can you give us the numbers of our digital ad last month? Yeah. And then go, look at all this. And then we were also on this show and so much, but you can't get those numbers off of the print ad. You see what I'm saying? So people just want that instant gratification. They want those likes. They want those followers. And
it's just a metric that means something. Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of times that we don't know what it means. Right. You know what I mean?
It changes.
It changes, and you
Just
hear all the time being
Zuckerberg.
insiders. Yeah. Zuckerberg, like they change how things are done and how things are calculated all the time. It's a moving target. But I really think that it's how much attention can you garner? I mean, Tony Stewart's a great example. I mean, what he's brought is all that attention. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he has arrived at a point in his life where he garners a lot of attention. So it's a really big deal.
They could not win a race and still win the season.
No doubt.
As far as these things we're talking about.
And they're probably still, no matter how they do in 2022 on the track, Dodge is going to be on the side of that car in 23, right. Probably 24. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of ways to win out here. And the fact remains is that only one guy is going to win Top Fuel in Pomona, only one person's going to win Funny Car, right? So if you're putting all your eggs in I got to win, I think you've got an uphill battle, man. That's a tough deal. So Anyways, what a deal, man. This has been a great show. Thank you guys, right? I mean, for whatever reason, it felt like 100 years since last Wednesday. Did you guys feel
yeah,
that?
it really did.
It did, really.
Why is that? What
I don't
happened?
know.
You know?
I don't know.
What's the don't ignore
we're
the
so
watch
busy. I
game
think
question?
the DI awards.
What's the
somebody
watch
asked
game?
what your watch game looks like these days, Wes?
Tag, Pepsi Tag Heuer.
You've had that one for a long time.
Yeah, I've had it for a few years. I wear this watch all the time. It's like my
mine are all
watch.
knockoffs.
Yeah,
so.
JT's probably wearing a $75,000 Audemars Piguet right now that he got from DHgate.com.
Yeah,
I guarantee you. You just got it. I mean, you get more invested in them than you think because you order 3 and you get 1.
Well, they're like lost in a shipping container.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean.
Somewhere.
I will tell you, I'm a big fan. I bought a tag because they sponsored Max Verstappen, right? And in Formula One, Mike introduced me to Formula One.
Man, you had that way before.
Yeah,
no. I bought that literally 2 years, like right as we were getting into F1.
No,
yeah,
I thought you had that thing for a while.
I've had it like for 2 years, probably.
Oh, okay.
3 maybe.
You lost a watch on one of our trips.
Yeah, I did. I lost a pretty decent watch.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, new subject.
I lost a watch too.
Yeah, it's I lost a watch one time. Rough deal. I think where did I lose a watch? Did I lose a watch in Saudi? I think did I lose a watch in Saudi Arabia?
I forget where it was, but you were pretty torn up.
Yeah, that happens, man. Yeah, it's such a bummer. But this is my favorite watch that I have right now. However, I'm not convinced that it's the ultimate as far as like a timepiece goes. Like it's a nice high-end timepiece, but I also don't know that it's like I get pissy that it's not as good of a watch as I think it should be for the money.
My DHgate cheap ones actually keep time pretty well.
Yeah. And what? So the Rolex that you got that you paid like $29.99.
Yeah. Do you remember that? Yeah. And we were in Saudi Arabia, and they were looking at watches, and I'm like, now they're taking a picture of that one from that. It's like
I remember this well.
Yeah, and I'm like,
it was a Breitling. And you ordered one on DHgate, like that same deal, right?
Yeah, I just
that
went
same
back to
day
the hotel and ordered one, and then it literally looks just like it. And
it was so funny because
Freeman, I was like, look, because he was making fun of me taking a picture that what the fuck you doing over there?
Well, JT, didn't you ask the guy how much it was? And he was like $47,500, brother. Yeah. And JT's like, okay, I'm gonna think about it.
We all did. We all did that. We all like that's a pretty good deal. We'll come back to you on that.
Yeah, man. We're gonna look at a couple other stores. I remember leaning over and I was looking at this one.
Financing was, but I would have bought it if it was like $29.95 for the rest of my life.
It was, but you got one damn near identical to it from DHgate.
I think
for
we were
$30.
looking for deals. I think we were thinking it was going to be some smoking deal because
I thought we would find a deal.
Didn't
I remember I looked over and there was this Batman Rolex that I wanted, which a Batman Rolex GMT2 that's like blue on top and black on the bottom of the bezel. I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh man, I want that watch like real bad. And Richard Freeman looks at me, he's like, buy it. I'm like, that's like $24,000. Like it's like $5,000 over market price. You know what I mean? It's like bringing more money than they're worth. I think we're good.
Was that
we'll
just Saudi?
Keep looking. That was in Saudi. Buy it.
It was like 800 million reals, and I'm like,
800 million reals. You bust out your iPhone real quick. Let me do the math on that real quick.
I'm screwed.
Have you guys ever wondered why there aren't more high-end companies involved in drag racing? Because like, especially at the highest levels of our sport, I mean, these are like, there's a lot of money, right? I mean, there's a lot of extremely affluent people that show up like at your PDRA race or at your NHRA races. I mean, there's a lot of big timers there. And I am sometimes surprised because I mean, there's a Rolex every trailer dang near at an NHRA drag race. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think Eric's got it right in the comments here. We're all broke. He was spending all our cars.
I've just often been surprised that we haven't seen more like high-end brands recognize that there's some opportunity here.
Mike,
right?
where'd you bought a wallet at some high-end store, didn't you?
No, I thought I was going to, but I didn't. I ended up buying the same thing when I got back to the U.S. I didn't trust it over there. I was like,
it reminded me when I was young. I wanted this wallet one time, and I only had like $20, and the wallet cost like $19.95 or something like that. And I was telling my grandpa, like, I'm gonna buy this wallet. I got $20, and he goes, well, if you spend your $20 that you've got on a wallet, what are you gonna put in it?
It's for the next money, Grandpa. It's for the money to come.
Word to the wise, man. Word to the wise.
Oh my God, what a deal. So are you guys, we'll close on this note, and I want to thank all of our sponsors one more time, Stroud Safety, Redline Oil. I'll remind you guys that every episode of our show here on Wednesday afternoons is brought to you by our friends at Redline Synthetic Oils. Check out that timing. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any other on the market. And they've been doing it since 1979. It's a name you know, and it's a name you love. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about our friends at Redline. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. Guys, I'm super excited about Sick Week. Did you hear that talk about like driving along the coast in Florida? Yeah. Like, this is going to be fun.
I texted Lyle and I said, we should have built a car for this. And he said, I am kicking myself or not. So
well, we're putting together, I will say right now, we have secured one sponsor for our coverage of that event. If anybody out there is interested in getting involved with what Drag Illustrated is doing on Sick Week, make sure to reach out to one of us. We'd love to hear from you, myself, JT, or Mike. I would actually, I'm considering pressing on y'all to go, or like meeting at a couple of the spots. You know what I mean? Like, you know, going for a couple of days, because my plan right now is to go the whole thing.
Yeah. Is there a live stream, like an official live stream of the deal?
I believe so. I think they're doing it themselves. I'm not totally sure, but I know that when I was talking to Tom Bailey last week, he mentioned that they have a live stream. I know they have a live stream, you know.
I was going to say we could go live. We could do some stuff.
That's kind of
just having some daily recaps, some photos, and some results for you guys, I think is going to be big too.
I do too, man. I get frustrated by that. I mean, a lot of the events that happen, and that's another thing, just so you know, it's a service we provide here at Drag Illustrated. So if you've got a race, you've got a track, and you need some help making sure that your racers, your events are celebrated, they're put in front of the masses, that your racers, your sponsors, your track, your staff gets to see their name in lights, get to be recognized, hit us up, man. It's part of our business. We provide that service for a lot of the biggest sanctions and series in the sport of drag racing, a lot of the biggest and most successful tracks in the sport of drag racing. So if you can't, if you can't afford or justify a full-time marketing person, a full-time media person, hit us up, man. We're here for you. So yeah, Beans, we will have daily recaps. I think that's one of the things that drive me crazy is like, I want to be able to find out what happened at these deals. Like, pretty freaking quickly. And I don't want to have to watch a 72-hour live stream replay to do it. You know, I want to be able to find out who won, who's leading the pack. I mean, just imagine if you had to like watch every minute or every second of a football game or a baseball game to like find out who won or what happened.
Terrible, JT, wouldn't it, to watch every minute of a football game?
Well, yeah, JT is watching every minute of every football game. But you get my drift, right? I mean, we make our fans work hard. Fans in drag racing.
Oh, yeah.